Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the third series of webinar on the BDM's Professional Competency Examination. Thank you for finding time and visiting today's webinar. As usual, I'm Shazwani from Megadata Academy. Will be responsible as moderator for today's session. Today we are presenting PCE for Electrical PEs presented by Engineer Chong Chiu Fan. There's a little housekeeping before we get started. Please mute your microphone during the presentation. If you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and speaker will read them during the Q&A session. We will have a short break during a presentation, maybe about 5 minutes, and we will send you all the relevant email after the event, including a link to download today's slide presentation. Today's guest speaker is Engineer Chong Chiu Fan. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical and Electronic from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. He is a professional engineer registered with Board of Engineer Malaysia, qualified person with Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara, and registered electrical energy manager with Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Engineer Chong has more than 19 years of working experience covering design, contract administration, project management, and consultancy in electrical instrumentation services. He has a vast experience in infrastructure building works, including green building and sustainable design, housing development, mixed development, office, commercial building, water and wastewater, highways, and roads. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Engineer Chong Chiu Fan to lead the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Is it okay? Yeah, okay. Thanks. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Okay, today I'm going to spend a bit time, about 2 hours or so with everyone, on this PCE exam. So, let me start my slide. So I'll try to, if you don't mind, I will try to off my camera just to preserve some bandwidth lah. Okay, so I think as I mentioned by the moderators, try to key in your questions. Then we'll try to address those questions along the way. Okay, by the end of the session. And I would like to treat this as more like a discussion. Okay, more like a discussion. I believe some of you might actually have experienced the PCE exam before. Okay, and maybe you can share some tips with others. Okay, basically, as I say, this will be more like a sharing session. Okay. Okay. I hope you can see my screen. Okay. A very good morning. Okay, to everyone. Afternoon. Okay. Basically, today's webinar will be focused on PCE for electrical PEs. Okay. For your information, this is the presentation outline. Okay. Basically, some of you might not have actually signed up for the earlier webinars. So in the slides, I will still have some basic information about PCEs. Okay, but I will briefly go through it quickly. Okay, we'll focus more on the syllabus and maybe some sample questions, and also some tips and strategies lah. Okay. For your information, I was among the first batch of trial candidates actually for PCE. PCE exam was developed by ACM earlier on in 2009 or 2010. Okay. Basically, there are quite a number of the volunteer candidates actually sit for PCE, the trial exam. Okay, so basically we are one of the so-called the guinea pig. Basically handling the PCE exam. So we actually provided the feedback to the board after the trial exam has been done. Okay, for your information, this PCE come about after the amendments to the Registration of Engineers Act in 2015, and currently the PCE exam has been conducted for the following branches: civil, electrical, geotechnical, environmental, mechanical, chemical, and mining. So at the moment, there's only about 7 disciplines has been covered under the current PCE exam lah. So basically, for those who actually would like to sit for other, for other disciplines who would like to sit for PCE, basically you need to actually write to the board. Okay. Okay, the objective of PCE, okay, I'm sure that you're also aware, basically the PCE happens and actually created the 2-tier system within the so-called the Board of Engineer registration. Okay, and basically this is to differentiate the so-called the candidates are we're actually practicing as a consultant, okay, compared to others. Okay, and professional and competency exam, in short PCE, actually want to test the candidates, okay, within the limits of professional engineering services, okay, whereby you are supposed to, okay, to understand all these requirements and apply your knowledge, okay, as per the REA 1967 Amendment 2015. Okay, basically regulations, rules, and engineering practices by BEM, statutory law codes and regulations, standards of professionalism, ethics, behavior imposed by BEM, and also another one is technical core competency, which we're going to focus on electrical for this particular session. Okay, as we know, basically PCE are separated into two parts, and the good thing about this is it's an open book exam. Okay, what it means by open book exam? So basically, you can bring in your documentation. Okay, but however, we are told that basically you can only bring in binded document. Okay, binded document is not, basically you cannot bring in those papers, okay, into the exam hall. Okay, so basically binded document you can allow to bring in. So that one you need to refer to the board. I mean, for detail, as far as we understand, basically you can bring in binded document. So you can actually bring in all the regulations, the rules, the standards, which is the binded form, okay, for your reference. Okay, basically the exam wanted to test your understanding and knowledge, okay, not so much on your memories. And for the PCE exam, basically there are two parts of it, part A and part B. Okay, basically the exam will be conducted every year as far as BEM is concerned. So far at the moment, okay, you are allowed to resit, okay, and I mean the good thing about PCE is currently they allow you to do receipt and you can actually complete the part A and part B separately. Okay, if you fail certain so-called exams for that particular year. Okay, part A basically is common papers. Okay, basically common papers basically are applicable for all candidates. Okay, basically it touches about the non-technical so-called subject matters, whereby we'll test you on the general so-called responsibility of the professional engineers. So those are the non-discipline related papers. Okay, most probably they will test you on contract administration and also other general regulation which actually govern the practicing of professional engineers in Malaysia. So for common papers, there's two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 basically is objective questions. Paper 2 basically is essay questions. And basically paper 1 and paper 2 format is very similar, okay, for electrical paper as well. Okay, even though part A is common papers and part B's are discipline-oriented papers. For example, here you see, this is civil papers. So for basically for electrical papers, paper 1 and paper 2, okay, you're going to have 40 objective questions, 1.5 hours. Passing mark is 50. Paper 2, electrical engineering, this is essay questions. Okay, 3 long essay questions. You need to answer 3 out of 5. Okay, I mean, passing mark also 50. Okay, I guess some of you actually might have actually taken the PCE earlier on. Okay, and you can look at the statistics. Basically, share here. Okay, as you can see, the numbers of candidates actually taking PCE has actually increased throughout the years. But of course, I mean, for electricals, we can see for 2019, basically we have 86 candidates for electrical. Okay, it's about almost average every year. We have about 30% of the candidates are coming from electrical. Okay, but of course, the passing rate for the candidates have not been released by the Board of Engineers for those candidates actually taking the exam in 2019. And I believe for 2020, we do not have any exam due to the pandemic. If you look at the statistics, okay, basically, you look at the passing rate is around 10% for 17 and 18. Okay, the passing rate for 2016 is extremely low. Basically, it's single digit. Okay, that also mainly because due to the first exam. Okay, and I think the candidates also not very familiar with the with the how to handle this exam, and not only to the candidates, basically the lecturers, I mean, or the examiners. I would say the examiners also trying to so-called slowly adjust themselves, okay, after the first exam. That's the reason why you can see some improvement in terms of the result of the exam. But no matter how, the passing rate is still relatively low lah. Okay, I mean, if you look at this statistic, okay, this is another statistic. Okay, you can see from here. Hopefully, when it comes to this 2021 exam, we're going to have more passing candidates for this particular session. Okay, you can see from here, average about single digit, about 10% or less. Okay, excuse me.
Hi, Achu, do you mind I interrupt the session to ask question, or you prefer me to put in the chat box?
I think we can try to make it under the maybe during the end of the session.
Okay,
put the chat box. I think later on also, I think during the Q&A session, I think I don't mind actually people ask question. You all can ask question. I mean, verbally lah. I don't mind, because sometimes you want to type in the chat box. Sometimes might be a bit difficult to explain yourself.
Okay.
So yeah, no problem. We keep it for the last.
End, until the end.
Yes, no problem. So as I mentioned during the earlier opening, I would like to take this session a bit more interactive. Okay, a bit more interactive, because I believe everyone in this particular so-called session, we have your own experience. Okay, so we also want to gather so-called feedback, okay, from the candidates who actually have taken the exam earlier on, or what so-called any suggestions you have, you see, I mean, on this PCE, so that ACM can be the platform for you to reflect those suggestions to the Board of Engineers. Okay, because I believe this exam is an ongoing process, and we would like to actually further improve, okay, how to make the exam a bit more practical. Okay, so I mean by getting the feedback from the candidates. Okay. As mentioned, I mean earlier on, we were going to discuss a bit more detail about the syllabus. Okay, I believe I think one of the reasons why the passing rate for the PCE exam has been low, I mean for the previous year is, I mean, according to the feedback from the examiners, okay, according to the feedback from the examiners, and also I mean for some of the candidates, basically they noticed that the question asked in the PCE exam, some of them might not be, maybe it's a bit out of their reach. Reason being is we also noticed that for some of the, I think for whatever reason, some of the professional engineers who are not practicing as a consultant at the moment, maybe you're working as a contractors or you're working as a suppliers. Okay, well, then basically you might actually face difficulties to answer the PCE exam. The reason being is actually if you're going through the syllabus in detail, basically you're going to notice that all these syllabus are mainly heavily, I would say heavily focused on practicing engineers, which actually currently working as a consultant. Okay, if you have been working under the consulting firm, okay, basically you have gone through the trainings, at least gone through the training as a consultant. Okay, you go through the process. Basically you have a higher chance to pass the PCE exam. That's the reason why I think the syllabus has been given by the Board of Engineers, so that basically the candidates will actually know what is the expectation. Okay, I mean from the Board of Engineers when you register yourself in the PCE exam. Okay, let's just go through briefly about all the syllabus, and I will briefly highlight some of the important things actually, or the common problems actually faced by the electrical engineers, or what are the things you need to know under all this documentation, so that you can actually go through the document again Because as I say, for example, regulatory practices, under the Street and Drainage and Building Act, basically Act 133, there are a lot of details in this particular act, but not all the so-called the elements or the regulations or the clauses in the act actually related to electrical engineers. But somehow, this is one of the main governing act, for building construction. So that's the reason why this syllabus has been actually highlighted. Okay, and basically, this is very important for practicing engineers. Okay, as we know, this particular act also will be covered under the common papers. Okay, because a common paper is supposed to handle the regulations and act and the common practice of engineers. Okay, regardless his so-called his discipline. Okay, and one of the elements important elements under this Street Drainage and Building Act is the CCC process. Okay, it's a CCC process where within this CCC process, the submission process, basically the terminology of principal submitting person and the submitting person has been introduced. Okay, for electrical engineers, normally we will not be the PSP. Okay, PSP under the Act, okay, basically are referring to architects and civil engineers, whereby they will be the main submitting parties, okay, for the projects, for the buildings under the Act. Okay, and under the Street Drainage and Building Act, UBBL has been so-called gazetted. And Uniform Building Bylaw basically are state so-called state related, and all the states will actually have their own building bylaw. Okay, so under the Act, basically different ministries and government agency will have a different role to play. Okay, like local council, different departments within the local agencies. And also under this particular Act, basically street lighting installation also have been included. Okay, so as electrical engineers, it's very, very important for us to understand our role, okay, our supporting role to the PSP, whereby the PSP for the building in construction basically is architect or civil engineers. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, under this Act, we have actually introduced a CCC process. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you heard about CCC. Okay, basically, CCC stands for Certificate of Completion and Compliance. Okay, under this particular CCC process, okay, there are numbers of forms, okay, need to be signed off by the PSP and SP, principal submitting person and submitting person. Okay, you can actually go through this particular link, okay, and you can actually see, okay, who is supposed to sign which form. Okay, for your information, there are a total of 21 forms, okay, under this CCC process. We call it G1 until G21. Okay, G1 until G21. And each form need to be signed off by different professions. Okay, so I would suggest, okay, as a practicing engineers, you should understand, okay, and fully aware, okay, you are supposed to handle which G form. Okay, and for electrical engineers, I can briefly tell you, okay, for your electrical engineers, basically you are involved in G7. Basically, G7 involve internal electrical installation, whereby before you sign the G7 form, okay, you need to ensure that the internal electrical installation has been properly completed, okay, based on your design and supervision. And under G16 is external electrical. Okay, basically we are looking at external electrical infrastructure. Okay, of course, G18 is street lighting. Okay, G20 is telecommunication. Okay, and of course, there's one form G11. G11 basically is meant for lift. Okay, and this G11 can be signed off by either mechanical or electrical engineer. Okay, so basically, for electrical engineers, basically you're only involved in 4 to 5 forms. Okay, for this particular process. Okay, after the 21 form has been signed off by relevant consultants, the architect or the PSP will issue the Form F. Okay, after he have actually collected 21 forms from the respective consultant, he will actually submit the Form F to conclude the whole CCC submission. Okay, so basically this CCC actually is more or less a replacement to the old CF system. Okay, just now we briefly touched about the Act. So under the Act, basically allowed the power to gazette Uniform Building Bylaw. This bylaw basically is a detailed requirements of all the buildings. Okay, as electrical engineers, okay, there are numbers of parts actually involving electrical engineers, especially for those who actually involved in the firefighting system. Okay, because as we understand, for a firefighting system will be designed by the mechanical engineers. But bear in mind, there are quite a numbers of electrical items which need to be handled by the electrical engineers. Okay, I mean, for example, in terms of power supply. Okay, as we know, basically, the mechanical firefighting system need to ensure that throughout the firefighting process, basically, the power supply is crucial. That's the responsibility of the electrical engineers. Okay, under the building bylaw, okay, if you refer to the building bylaw, okay, I need to stress that for the building bylaw, Uniform Building Bylaw is state dependent. Okay, it's state dependence. Okay, some of the states actually, in a way, they have adopted a more advanced version of building bylaw compared to certain states. I just take a typical example. Okay, under the building bylaw, there are certain elements which electrical engineers should take take note. Okay, basically, it's all under the part 3 of the building bylaw: space, lighting, and ventilation. Okay, so basically, as I mentioned just now, okay, some of the states actually have adopted a more advanced or latest version of building bylaw, which this building bylaw have actually included item number D and E, the requirements of MS 1525, and also lightning protection requirements. Okay, already adopted in the building bylaw. Just take a typical example. If you refer to the building bylaw of Selangor State, you actually can see that some of the requirements of MS 1525, okay, and also MSIC 62305 has been included as part of the mandatory requirement by the Selangor State government. Okay, compared to some other state, for example, maybe you're talking about maybe Kedah, they might not have actually implemented these 2 requirements. Okay, besides that, the rest of the building bylaw parts, for example, lift requirement, firefighting requirement, proposed hazard classes for building, fire barriers, part 8, fire protection system, fire alarm, fire detection, emergency power supply. All these things are all clearly spelled out in the 10th schedule, okay, of building bylaw. And the good thing about this thing is you actually can download the building bylaw, okay, from the local council or the state government website. Okay, that's why I say, as a practicing engineers, okay, before you actually start to do your design for that your particular project, please make sure that, okay, please check which building bylaw is applicable for your project. As I mentioned, Selangor building bylaws might be different compared to Kedah building bylaw. Okay, so it's very, very important for a practicing engineer, electrical engineers, to ensure that you are following the right requirements, okay, under the building bylaw. Okay, beside the building bylaw, okay, as electrical engineers, I believe the Electricity Supply Act is not something new to you. Okay, and of course, as we know, Electricity Supply Act basically only applicable in Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah. Sarawak is having their own Sarawak Electricity Ordinance. Okay. So under this act and ordinance for the electricity supply, basically there are certain roles and responsibility. Okay, I mean provided in the Act to the ministries and other government agencies. Okay, so it's very, very important for electrical engineers, okay, to understand, okay, all these requirements. For example, how the Act is introduced, okay, what's the process, and how the rules and regulations be enacted, okay, under the Act. Okay, and the function of the Electric Supply Act basically is mainly to handle the electrical safety and also under the Act, basically ST has been tasked as the regulators for the electricity production, distribution, and also retails. That's where all the licensings has been actually given, okay, under the Act and also the relevant regulations. Under the Act also, basically, they actually registered the competent person. Okay. For your information, I believe many of you might be aware, okay, our board actually registered professional engineers. Okay, and ST also actually, and also Sarawak agencies also actually registered competent person. But as a practicing engineers, I'm sure that you're also aware the difference between the competent person registered under the Electric Supply Act and also the competent or the professional engineer registered under the Board of Engineers Malaysia. There are distinct difference between these two. Okay, and for example, under the Electric Supply Act, the competent persons are registered under different wattage level, for example. But under the Board of Engineers, there's only one category of electrical engineers, okay, electrical professional engineers. I mean, so basically every regulators or every agency will handle, will focus on different aspect of the work. And for under the Electric Supply Act, basically electrical safety is one of the most important elements. Okay, of course, under the Act also, basically the safety is safety requirements are basically properly listed out under the regulations, and also the control items also actually clearly spelled out under the regulation. Okay, as electrical engineers, I'm not sure how many of you actually are aware that basically there are a lot of control items under the so-called the Electric Supply Act, which those control items are mainly equipment related to domestic application. For example, your fridge, your TVs, okay, your kettles, those are under control items, which means that all these control items will require to get a certificate of approval from ST. Okay, and the list of equipment under the control item can be obtained from Energy Commission website. Okay, so basically, as an electrical engineer, you should be aware of all these requirements, because nowadays there are quite numbers of direct import items, okay, from overseas, or any one of you actually bought certain equipments from overseas through online platform like Shopee, Lazada, you see. So basically, all these things, some of the items are under control item. Okay, there's certain process required. So basically, as a professional electrical engineers, you should actually be aware of all these things and advise your client accordingly. Okay. Again, under the Electric Supply Act and also the Sarawak Electricity Ordinance, there are others regulations has been enacted under the Act, okay, given by the power under the Act. So a few of them actually are Energy Efficiency Management and Electrical Energy Regulations 2008. Basically, these particular regulations actually is very important, whereby this regulation actually created another category of registration under the Energy Commission, which is the REM, Registered Electrical Energy Manager. Okay, whereby under these regulations, okay, consumers consume more than 3 million kilowatt hour per year. Okay, we actually for the 6 months we actually subject to these regulations. Of course, there are quite a number of other regulations that's been enacted under the Act. Basically, Electricity Regulation 1994, Electricity Rules for Sarawak, okay, and also other codes like Malaysia Distribution Code and Malaysia Grid Code. Okay, these are some of the documents actually has been so-called developed under the Electricity Supply Act. So as electrical engineers, these documents are very crucial for you to understand, and this document can be easily downloaded from Energy Commission website. Okay, beside the main act, which is the Electricity Supply Act, there are others act and regulations which affecting the practicing of electrical engineers. Okay, we'll go through briefly. Okay, one of them is basically Energy Commission Act 2001. Okay, basically as a practicing engineers, okay, you need to understand the function and power, okay, given under this particular act to the ministries and also government agencies. Okay, of course, beside the Energy Commission Act, Factories and Machinery Acts is also very, very important, because as we know, all the machineries and factories operation will actually involve electricity supply. Okay, that's as electrical engineers, basically it's very crucial for us to understand the requirements, not only the main act like the Electricity Supply Act, but also other acts actually regulate the practice of electrical engineers. Okay, and another very important so-called act which most of the time I would say might be neglected by the electrical engineer is Fire Services Act. Okay, because when we talk about fires, we always have the assumption that fire are mechanical. So basically, all this should be handled by mechanical engineers. Okay, that's why for these particular areas, ACM, we also would like to put emphasis on this particular fire services. Okay, because as I mentioned earlier, all the fire protection or the fire services installation will require power supply and also support from the electrical installation. Okay, to ensure that all these fire services equipment or installation can operate properly during emergency. Okay, and under this Fire Services Act, there are quite a number of regulations has been enacted, and there are certain elements within the regulations actually involve the responsibility of the electrical engineers. So it's also very important for us to understand, okay, at least the overview of this Fire Services Act, especially those elements that actually involve electrical engineer. Okay, beside the hardcore electrical installation, electrical engineer also have to deal with telecommunication. Okay, also deal with telecommunication. Okay, so, that's the reason why this particular act is very important. Basically, this act actually also start the formation of MCMC, which is in Malay is SKMM. Okay, basically this particular act, Communication and Multimedia Act, actually very much govern the telecommunication and multimedia industries. Okay, under this particular act, there are regulations been formed, and MCMC has been so-called formed by the government. Okay, to develop the necessary requirements related to telecommunication. Okay, their role basically is very much similar to Energy Commission, whereby Energy Commission is focused on electricity supply, and MCMC basically focused on telecommunication and multimedia. Okay, based on this particular guide, okay, basically there are quite a number of guidelines, okay, has been produced by or assisted by MCMC. So as electrical engineers, okay, you should know and should be aware all these requirements. Okay, you can actually download the guidelines from the website, okay, from MCMC. Of course, there are certain electrical requirements under the Water Services Industry Act, okay, whereby the regulator basically is SPAN, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara, whereby there are numbers of guidelines and regulations has been enacted or has been regulated by SPAN, which involve electrical installation. Okay, this is again, unless you are doing infrastructure project such as water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. If not for conventional building, you might not actually involve a lot as an electrical engineer, because for conventional building, you're looking at cold water supply, you see, and also maybe sewerage, whereby mostly are handled by mechanical, and electrical involvement and under those particular projects are very limited. As I say, unless you are doing project related to the utility or water utility, you see, such as the water treatment plant, whereby all these utility based project will have a very specific electrical requirements, which has been provided by the SPAN technical committee. For those, actually, you can actually refer to the SPAN website for additional information. Okay. I believe I will not actually go through in too much of detail, okay, on this thing, because as I think today, basically, we are not here to discuss about, to train you to be electrical engineers. I presume if not all of you, most of you are electrical PEs. That's the reason why you attend this PCE so-called talk, okay? And I believe this information basically to you should be all, I think you all should actually fully aware of all this detail. Okay, this electricity supply system basically is one of the important syllabus, where actually the syllabus actually cover generation, transmission, and distribution. Okay, so basically as an electrical engineer, you are expected to understand, okay, how's the distribution system within Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak, okay, and also how to design the power supply, okay, in terms of the requirements, okay. Beside the so-called the grid code, the transmission, the grid code, the distribution code, okay, basically the other agency we actually will deal with, quite often is the supply authorities, or the supply authorities, which is the TMB for Peninsular Malaysia, and SESB for Sabah, and SEB for Sarawak. Okay, each supply utility, they have their own requirements, and basically all those requirements can be easily downloaded from the relevant utility company's website. Okay, as electrical engineers, basically very often we are dealing with the planning of the power supply, okay, whereby the requirements of substation, load estimation, tariff has been the common thing that actually as electrical engineer we deal with. So as for electrical engineers, we expect to know these requirements from the various utility companies. Okay, and of course, during the process of power supply application, basically we are dealing with different requirements such as power factors, standby power supply, configuration design, fault level. All these things are the basic elements. Okay, as I think we are expected to get from the candidates from the PCE exam. Okay, transmission. Okay, basically these are some of the general so-called I would say general knowledge you should know. Okay, even though you might not be actually doing transmission projects yourself, but there are some basic terminologies. Okay, we actually should expect the candidates from PCE to understand. Okay, so of course, I think for the PCE exam also, basically you have the options to actually to choose the questions. Okay, especially the essay. The essay questions. Okay, if you are not from transmission background, okay, you might not want to choose the question on transmission related works. Okay, that's the reason why we have more options for you to choose. Okay, you can actually choose those questions are related to your background, okay? But of course, as I say, as electrical engineers, you should be able to understand some basic terminology, for this electrical installation, even though it's transmission level. Okay, generation, again, there's certain terminology we are expected to for the candidates to be familiar yourself. Okay, these are the some simple thing. And for your information, basically, I know that basically some of this knowledge has been very so-called might be too detailed for some of the candidates. Okay, but as I say, I believe most of us, okay, we have actually come across all this terminology and this basic knowledge during our uni time. Okay, so I believe we will not be PCE will not be asking questions in detail in specific in a very specific niche area lah. Okay, but as a professional electrical engineers, you are expect to understand, you see, all these basic terminology like short circuit rating. Okay, I mean when it comes to generations, okay. Of course, MV and system and equipment, I believe all these requirements are a bit more relevant to us, most of us, okay? Because I believe most of the electrical engineers or practicing electrical engineers will be dealing with MV system, medium voltage system, and also equipment. So basically, for your information, okay, basically we expect the candidates to understand, okay, all these major MV equipments. Okay, you should be able to differentiate, okay, what type of transformer you're looking at, okay, what kind of standard we are referring to, okay, what is the criteria when you want to choose or select the right type of transformer for your own application, okay, what is the pro and cons, okay, for different types of transformer, for example, cast racing or oil type, okay, in terms of operation, okay, whether force air, okay. So basically, as an electrical engineer, you should be able to, to differentiate, okay, all these requirements, okay, and to differentiate what is the technology difference between different types of equipment. Besides transformer, another so-called equipment we always deal with basically is switchgear. Okay, there are so many types of switchgear, and there's a cost impact for all types of switchgear. Okay, so as an electrical engineer, I believe you should be able to advise your client, okay, on what type of switchgear to be used, okay, suitable for your project. Of course, beside the equipments, basically the MV design, the substation design also very crucial, okay. And I believe in the TMB supply guideline also there are quite a numbers of requirements, okay, in terms of every MV connection, okay, and also MV design, MV substation design. Okay, beside the substation and also the so-called MV equipment, basically the cabling, also another item which as electrical engineers you need to look at. Okay, let me share a bit. Okay, I also noticed nowadays, of course, as I say, I'm not here to teach or to brief on the design aspect, but very often when an electrical engineer doing the design for MV system, sometimes you might actually miss out certain elements, especially come to cable so-called cabling system design. Okay, and of course, earthing system for MV substation is another element, important elements. Okay, for electrical engineers to understand. Okay. Okay, when it comes to LV distribution system, okay, for Malaysia, we have quite a comprehensive reference, okay, for electrical engineers. Okay, I believe some of you might not actually have all these document, okay, for the LV distribution system. Okay, MS-IEC 60364 is the main mandatory standard, okay, for electrical installation in building. Okay, basically there's a part 1 up to part 7. Part 7 basically is for special installation. Okay, special installation. Basically, for example, our water heater or water area installation basically are covered under Part 7. So as an electrical engineer, I would strongly recommend you to get a copy of all these documents, okay? Because this is the mandatory document we need to refer as a electrical engineer if you want to practice as a electrical engineer. Okay, MS IEC 60364, MS 1979, MS 1936. Okay, these are the important reference document for electrical engineer. Okay, please get a copy of that. Okay, so that you can have your reference. Okay, during your practicing day. Of course, besides LV distribution, another core important things about the electrical supply is the power quality, okay, and also EMC. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you actually have come across your submission to TMB. Okay, based on the TMB supply application, okay, professional engineers need to do a self-declaration on the PQ power quality compliance. Okay, so that's why it's very important for electrical engineers to understand the impact of power quality to your electrical installation. Okay, there are some of the standards actually referring here. Okay, you can actually go through those standards and understand the so-called the PQ requirements. Okay, as I say, TMB guideline or TMB supply application handbook did actually give a brief introduction or the brief requirements on the PQ. Okay, when you want to connect the so-called connect to the TMB or the utility power supply grid. Okay, these are some of the requirements from the PQ and EMC. Okay. Okay, beside the power supply, the power quality, LV, MV, HT design, another elements or another syllabus which is very, very important for an electrical engineers to understand is the system protection. Okay, basically, as an electrical engineer, we are expected to understand the basic concept of protection, whether it's zone protection, unit protection, or pilot wire protection. Okay, I'm sure that during the practice, your practice as a consulting engineers or electrical engineers, you come across a lot of protection relays. Okay, but those protection relays normally are really are function specific. Okay, those are only components to carry out certain protection function. Okay, but as an electrical engineer, you must understand the concept of system protection. That only you can actually apply those knowledge to design your protection scheme properly. That's why as electrical engineers, we are expected you to understand the basic concept of system protection, whereby short circuit calculation should be at your fingertips. Okay. Of course, when you want to design the system protection for your project, basically another important terminology is discrimination. Okay, so that you can actually discriminate. Okay, and to have an effective system protection for your project. And we are dealing with, as I say, we're going to deal with protection relays, protection setting. Okay, and also each relays will have their own protection discrimination curve. Okay, as an electrical engineer, you should be able to advise or to design a system protection which is to have sufficient discrimination to have effective system protection. Okay, because we always want to isolate the problem at the source and to prevent it from affecting the whole system and process. Again, when it comes to system protection, there are quite a number of protection relays. We deal with day in, day out. These are some of the common ones. Okay, over current fault, motor protection, transformer differential protection, transformer restricted fault, cable feeder protection. In fact, there are so many more, you see, when it comes to protection relays. Okay, and basically, for Malaysia also, we have quite a number of MS standards, okay, referring to IEC standards, actually mention about protection relays. Okay, and for your information, basically, Department of Standards also are in the midst of developing a guideline on protection relay testing commissioning. Okay, so basically, all this as an electrical engineer, we are expected to understand the fundamental of the system protection. Okay, beside that, I'm sure that you're also aware protection relay require calibration. Okay, protection relay require calibration. As an electrical engineer, you should be aware that basically how often is the protection relay required to be recalibrated. Okay, please check the regulations and act requirements on this particular calibration work. Okay, when it comes to protection relays, I think beside the protection, when it comes to system protection, beside the protection relays, there are also other instrumentation which also contribute to the complete system. Okay, basically we're talking about CTs and PTs. Okay, of course, I'm sure that everyone will know basically when are you going to use the so-called the different types of CT and PTs. Okay, different class. Okay, I'm sure that you also must be aware that when it comes to metering CTs, metering class, there are certain so-called class you need to fulfill. Okay, if you want to so-called apply for your metering purpose, especially revenue related work, you see, because based on the distribution code and also TMB supply application guideline, only certain so-called CTs classes can be used for tenant metering purpose. So as an electrical engineer, you should be aware, okay, what type of so-called type of and class of CTs or PTs to be used for your project and application. Of course, when it comes to unit protection, okay, instead of the system protection, basically all these are equipment-oriented protection, whereby we can actually have additional protection for equipment like transformer and generators. Okay. Beside the hardcore electrical distribution and also protection scheme, as electrical engineers, basically we are also dealing with many other systems within the buildings. Okay, for example, one of them basically is lighting. Okay, I'm sure that as electrical engineers, we deal with lighting design or lighting system very often. I would say all the projects will actually involve lighting system. Okay, whether it's indoor or outdoor. So as a candidate for PCE, we expect you to understand some basic fundamental concept about lighting design or lighting system. Okay, so basically certain terminology should be I think you should be familiar yourself with all this terminology like luminous intensity. What is the difference between luminance and illuminance? Okay, what is the requirements of CRI? Okay, because as electrical engineers, okay, when we are practicing, basically we should be looking at two aspects of lighting. One is the quantity of light, another one is quality of light. So to be effectively doing the lighting design, you should have some basic understanding about all these terminologies and concepts. Okay, but of course, as an electrical engineer, you also should be able to differentiate, okay, what type of light source, okay, what kind of effect you need to get for different types of project. Your design for if you are designing for a retail mall and designing for an office, the requirements might be slightly different. Okay, when it comes to authorities' requirements, I believe for lighting, basically there are quite a number of Malaysia standards and guidelines you actually can refer to. Okay, basically as you mentioned here, MS ISO 8995 basically is a lighting standard for indoor workplace. Okay, beside that, for your information, DOSH, okay, a Department of Safety and Health also have some guideline on lighting for workplace. So you actually can try to go to the website and try to look for those reference document. Okay, because those are the government agencies actually providing inputs and requirements to ensure that the so-called lighting design is properly done to ensure safety of the workplace. Okay, beside the lighting, Okay, basically another important system which also play a very crucial role in the building basically is the lightning protection system. Okay, I believe as electrical engineers, you also should be fully aware that currently in Malaysia, I would say Peninsula Malaysia and Sabah, whereby the Energy Commission is enforced, basically MSIC 62305 has become mandatory standard, okay, for buildings in Peninsula and Sabah. Okay, as I say, Sarawak, they have different agencies who actually regulating electrical installation. Okay, and Energy Commission has actually made MSIC 62305 a mandatory standards. Okay, many years ago, and recently in January 2020, basically Energy Commission Malaysia have actually issued a circular on the enforcement, okay, on the MSIC 62305. Therefore, as an electrical engineer, you should be fully aware what is the mandatory standards actually governing the lightning protection design in Peninsula and Sabah. Okay, where the Energy Commission is the regulatory body. Okay, besides lightning protection, as I say, fire protection also a very crucial, important system within a building. And electrical engineers actually can contribute, okay, our portion of the work to the success of the fire protection system. Okay, these are some of the standards, okay, and actually guiding the design of the electrical engineers. Okay, again, I'm not sure how many of you actually have access to this MS 1745 fire alarm and detection system, because most of the time, I think currently also, I think for Bomba submission, I believe Bomba are requesting a mechanical engineer to endorse on the fire alarm system as part of the firefighting system. Okay, but as I say, as an electrical engineer, you should actually contribute, okay, to this particular design, because fire alarm system is still very much electrical in nature. So I would strongly suggest the practicing electrical engineers to get a copy of this document, okay, MS 1745, okay, fire alarm and detection system, and also some other relevant MS and BS standards. Okay, for your information, emergency lighting and exit sign, okay, for emergency lighting and exit sign, currently for Malaysia, we have one MS standard. Basically, it's MS 2687. Okay, MS 2687 basically is the Malaysia standard who actually assist or assist the electrical engineers on the requirements of emergency lighting and exit sign. Okay, of course, beside all this firefighting system, fire lift, as mentioned, earlier on, the supply of the firefighting equipments also become very important, and the responsibility of the electrical engineer. I think we can take a short 5 minutes break before we continue the rest of the session. Is it okay? Because I think it's not 1 o'clock now.
Yeah, okay. We take a short break about 5 minutes, then we can continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I think when you have any questions, actually you can try to key in. Then we will discuss in the the end of the Q&A session. Thank you.
Engineer Chong, you may continue the presentation.
Okay, let's continue. I think I will try to briefly go through this, then we can focus more on the Q&A and also some tips at the back. Okay, extra low voltage, as electrical engineers, we are also need to handle some of the ELV system, whereby some of them will basically is a security system, and also the building automation system lah. Okay, so basically I think this is something very common, but it might not happen for all the projects, depends on the nature of the project lah. So these are the basic ELV system which electrical engineers should have certain knowledge on that. Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, the G11, the form of leave, basically the form 11 for leave basically can be signed off by either electrical or mechanical engineer. That's the reason why, okay, as electrical engineers, basically we should actually, as an electrical engineer, we should be able to appreciate some of the issues related to all these vertical and horizontal transportation. Because all these equipments actually will actually subsequently create some so-called electrical related issues, okay, and may actually contribute to the consideration of the electrical system, like harmonics, because we are using a lot of hard drive and also so which actually can contribute to harmonics to the electrical system. Of course, as electrical engineers, of course, this hazardous environment also become one of the crucial important elements, okay, whereby we need to design our electrical system to ensure that we comply to these requirements. I believe this IEC 60079 is a very common standards when it comes to explosion or hazard area classification. And I believe many of the consulting engineers might not actually involve, okay, in this kind of so-called hazardous environmental design, unless you are dealing with some of the special project like so-called maybe those are projects which actually store chemicals, where you actually potentially you have a fire hazard or so-called explosion hazard. Then basically you need to identify and also identify the so-called the hazard classification and also select the equipment, okay, using the right classification, okay, because all these require special attention. You cannot actually apply the same basic engineering so-called design principle for this kind of so-called environment, okay, and also equipment and also cable selection also be very different because of the requirements of the explosion proof, also a hazard for this hazard area. Okay, beside this, okay, as electrical engineers, I think we also must ensure that so-called when we're doing the building design, we are also trying to implement energy efficient so-called strategies, okay, and basically one of the important standards actually guiding us for this particular elements is MS 1525. Basically, MS 1525 basically is meant for non-residential building. Okay, there's another MS basically for the similar application for residential building. Basically, it's another MS lah. But as I say, most of the time, actually, when it comes to energy efficiencies, especially on the electrical equipment, basically we refer to MS 1525 lah, whereby most of the non-residential building will be using quite a numbers of electrical equipment actually require a special attention. Okay, when it comes to infrastructure, okay, just now we talked about building. This is basically infrastructure. Okay, when it comes to infrastructure, basically, as I mentioned, based on the G form also, we noticed that basically we need to sign off G18, whereby it's related to street lighting. Okay, so when it comes to exterior lighting, basically there are numbers of standards actually we need to refer to. Okay, basically those exterior lighting actually involve road, junction, roundabout, interchange, and also local housing development road. Okay, whereby one of the important so-called MS standards actually governing the road lighting design, yeah, and also the public amenities areas basically is MS 825. Okay, basically currently at S825, basically we are adopting some of the so-called CIE standard and also ISO standards to form the Malaysia MS 825 standards. So these are the standards actually, as I say, as an electrical engineer, you should actually refer to. And I'm sure that, I'm not sure how many of you actually have these standards with you. Okay, so again, try to get a copy of that. Okay, because I think Malaysia's, the stakeholders actually have put in a lot of effort to develop all these relevant standards for the usage of the industrial players. So I think I would strongly encourage you to get a copy of these standards, and so that you can actually understand the requirement. Okay, I always believe as an electrical engineer and the practicing consulting engineers, our design should always based on standards. It's not because of Chong say so, it's because of standards say so. So as a practicing engineers, even though when you are answering your PCE exam also, it's also very important for you to identify the relevant code and standards and regulations actually governing the work you are doing. Okay, that will actually play a very important role, okay, when it comes to answering PCE exams. Of course, under this exterior lighting, basically there are quite a numbers of so-called parts under the 825, which govern the different types of road configuration and also different types of so-called design, especially for those which is not very common for practicing building services engineer. Basically, it's like tunnel and also some underpass. Okay, so these are some of the standards actually we refer for exterior lighting. Okay, beside that, okay, there are also some other special application. Okay, like the facade landscape lighting and also obstruction light, basically, which is under the Department of Civil Aviation. Okay, you can actually Google this MS 825. If you want to know more. Okay. Okay. Beside the street lighting, under the I would say the G20 communication. Okay. Basically, under the G19, G20, G-Form 20 under communication. Okay. The infrastructure for communication also become responsibility of the electrical engineer. So it's very important. Okay. Basically, we understand the type of standard design. Okay, we need to refer, especially when it comes to infrastructure design. Okay, what type of manhole, what kind of ducting, interfacing. Okay, and I'm sure that if you are practicing as an electrical engineer or consulting engineers, I think during the course of your work, okay, you actually all these so-called requirements, all this syllabus has been actually should have been part of your work, your daily work. For example, this telecommunication infrastructure. Okay, when you want to, as a consulting engineers, when you're doing your so-called your project submission, okay, I'm sure that you're going to go through all this process. For example, manhole ducting. Okay, when you're submitting your plan to telco, the telecommunication service provider, basically all these details need to be incorporated in your design. For example, what type of manhole okay to be used, what kind of ducting, okay, based on your development, okay, and what is the termination and interfacing requirements. And beside that, okay, as an electrical engineer, when you're submitting for your project, you also need to have the clearance on the microwave communication path. Okay, this microwave communication path basically is meant for high-rise building, okay, above 50 meter, 15. Okay, because as we know, you can see there are quite a numbers of so-called microwave equipment actually, or wireless equipment actually has been installed, okay, by the telco companies for wireless communication. There are quite a numbers of equipment has been installed, sometimes above the building. Okay, so if your project is on the pathway of those microwave path, basically you might need to get the clearance from the asset owner. Okay, at least they will be properly informed. Okay, basically your building is going to construct and your building is going to obstruct or blocking their microwave path. They will have sufficient time to divert their microwave communication equipment. Okay, so basically, this requirement is to inform them about your development. Okay, basically, they will not have the jurisdiction to stop you from development, which means that, for example, you intend to build an 18-story building, okay, and you're in the way of a microwave, path by maybe by one of the telco company, maybe Maxis or TM, okay. So basically, it's your responsibility to inform them, okay. Now we are building an 18-story or 28-story building. It's going to block your microwave path based on the information. So we are telling you this building will be constructed and completed by this date. So the the telco company will have sufficient time to divert their microwave so-called path to another location. Okay, beside the so-called the telecommunication infrastructure, I believe as electrical engineers, sometimes we also deal with traffic controls. Okay, if you are having if you are doing a road project whereby you might have a traffic signal system and also CCTV system. But of course, again, for consultants actually doing building projects, you might not actually come across this so-called type of system. Okay, unless you are doing highways or roads, then you might actually come across this traffic control system. That's why in the exam, I believe we have more options to choose. So basically, it's very much depends on your selection. Okay, common requirement. Okay, basically, generally, as electrical engineers, okay, basically we should actually have the ability to understand the technical standards. Okay, what is the standards? As I say, what is the standards actually governing our work? Okay, which standard to refer? Okay, under different types of projects. Okay, under different circumstances. Okay, what kind of standards or what kind of so-called process you need to go through? And it's also very important, okay, for us to ensure that the electrical installation has been properly commissioned, and all the authorities' requirement. For example, Borang G and Borang H, as required by Energy Commission, okay, to be signed off prior to energization of the electrical system. So as electrical engineers, basically, we should be fully aware of all these processes, okay, from the start, during the planning stage, up to the end commissioning and operation stage, okay, because every stage is important to ensure that safety, so-called precaution has been properly taken care of under the current system. Another common requirements basically are related to the equipment. Basically, are IP rating. Okay, as electrical engineers, I believe IP rating is something very common. Okay, especially when we are doing equipment selection. Okay, to suit the environmental condition of the installation, and of course, switchboard form of segregation. Basically, as mentioned, basically the IC standard or MSIC standards. Referring to the switchboard design, we need to, as electrical engineers, basically we need to have certain understanding about that. You see, so basically these are some of the syllabus. Okay, for electrical engineers, as far as the board is concerned, okay, BM is concerned, basically these are the electrical engineering syllabus which they expect the candidate to sit for the PCE exam to have certain understanding. Okay, so we have actually briefly go through the syllabus. I believe, as I say, those syllabus are, to me, should be the common knowledge. Okay, as electrical engineers, you should know. Some of you might actually have certain in-depth knowledge in certain segment because of your nature of work. But as an electrical engineer who want to sit for a PCE exam, you should have some general understanding, okay, broad view understanding, knowledge about all the areas, okay. At least you should be able to answer some of the questions, okay, whether it's general question or specific questions related to certain segments or sectors of the syllabus. So we will briefly go through some of the sample questions. For PCE, of course. This sample question is only meant for you to understand a bit how the question will look like. Okay, in your PCE exam. Okay, in your PCE exam. Okay. First, okay, as I mentioned earlier in the format of the exam, basically the format of the exam actually for electrical papers, we have two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 basically is multiple choice questions. Basically, you can choose from A, B, C, D, E. Okay, and paper 2 basically is essay questions. Okay, whereby you are expected to answer 3 out of 5 questions, long essay questions. Okay, and basically you do not need to score 100 marks for the exam. Okay, basically I would say please aim for a pass. Okay, and as you can see from here, this is one of the sample questions given by the board. Okay, so as I say, basically these are some of the common areas you as an electrical engineer you should know. And to me, for this kind of questions, should be free questions, because this kind of question basically is referring directly to the document. Okay, so I think another issue about the candidate is, okay, for information, as I say, myself also have actually attend the trial PCE exam many years ago before they implemented the thing. I think we can see candidates actually bring in a luggage bag of documents for them to refer. So I'm not sure how much time do you have for you to flip the document if you have not seen the document at the first place earlier on. Okay, basically, I think as an electrical engineer, I would strongly suggest please go through the document. At least when you want to look for the information in the documents, you know where to look for. So basically, you can see from here, basically, as I say, PCE exam is very much focused on the requirements as for the practicing consultant. That's why rules and regulations play a very important role in the PCE exam compared to the common PE, which they do not intend to go for PCE exam. You can see from here, basically, this is a sample question. So basically, as I say, the act is very important together with the regulation. This is one of the sample. Okay, do not describe the function. I believe this should be a free questions. Okay, all these things are mandatory. You can see from here, you see, all these questions are basically building bylaws. You see, even though the question is asked about genset, maybe electrical, but as you can see from here, all these are, if you ask me, all these are not direct electrical questions. That's the reason why it's very important, especially under the bylaw. For those who actually are related to firefighting system. As an electrical engineer, I would say 10th schedule is a very important schedule for an M&E engineer, because the 10th schedule actually defines the mechanical and electrical provision, okay, for under the building bylaw requirements. Okay, of course, another question is related to TMB system, short circuit rating. To me, this question also another free question. But of course, some of the candidates actually, especially from Sarawak, because they are telling us, basically, they are saying that we are not dealing with TMB, we are dealing with SEB, Sabah Energy Barat. So SEB lah, okay. So they always, I would say, there are suggestions, okay, saying that why the question in PCE are so much, in terms of percentage, are focused very much on Peninsula compared to Sarawak, you see, because Sarawak is unique, as I say, because of the requirements are different. So I would say the thing about so-called PCE is, okay, as engineers, when you have your PCE, you actually can practice in Malaysia lah. Okay, so for candidates in Sarawak, so I believe all this information also available in the website. Just that you might need to actually study a bit more. I think same thing goes to a candidate in Peninsula and Sabah. As I say, Sabah also is having a different utility company, SESB. I believe, but however, I believe SESB's requirements in Sabah compared to Peninsula is very much similar. Okay, but for Sarawak, I believe I believe the requirements might be, the technical requirement might be very similar. Maybe on some of the localities, requirement might be slightly different. The one I'm not very sure. So basically, we need to, as I say, the syllabus for PCE for electrical engineering actually covers both Peninsula and Sarawak, whereby the Electricity Supply Act and also the Sarawak Electricity Ordinance also involved. So as a candidate for PCE, I strongly suggest you to go through both documents. Okay, at least you have a better options to choose. Okay, when it comes to this kind of so-called questions. Okay, EMC. Okay, this is another type of typical questions, but of course, for multiple choice questions, basically you have the so-called the advantage of selecting A, B, C, D, E if you don't know the answer at all. Okay, luckily PCE exam they do not actually deduct the so-called the points if you answer the thing wrongly. Okay, so as I say, when you have all this document with you, basically you actually can refer to those documents. Okay, and under the EMC, for example, these questions under the EMC, the standards governing the EMC also basically they actually clearly define what is EMC phenomenon, what is non-EMC phenomenon. Okay, just for discussion purpose. Okay, of course, I mean another typical question, I mean related to telecommunication. Okay, so basically I think this is another 3 questions for electrical engineers. A, B, C, D, E is quite straightforward. So basically these are that's why I say as electrical engineers, you should be able to differentiate different type of technology, what is the advantage and disadvantage. Okay, you might not know the exact difference. For example, you might not know, okay, compared to a single mode fiber, compared to a multi-mode fiber, how much so-called how much data you can carry in terms of percentage, or what's the additional distance you actually you manage to cover. You see, you might not know the exact numbers, but as I say, as an electrical engineers, you should have certain fundamental knowledge about all this technology, like what I discussed. I mean, I explained just now on the types of MV equipment. You see, different type of equipment is suitable for different type of application, depends on the environmental requirements. Okay, another one is this one. Okay, this paper 2. Okay, basically, this is another type of question which can come out from so-called paper under paper 2. So again, you are required to list down all the functions, to list down all the agencies. Okay, basically, I mean related to part 2, there are also calculation. Okay, question actually involved. Okay, I have the feedback from the examiners. Okay, whereby I'm not sure. Maybe nowadays, especially when you have been actually working as an electrical engineer for so many years. Okay, you nowadays you do not need to do your own calculation anymore lah. Okay, so I was told by the examiners, some of the candidates, PCE candidates, cannot even do a simple calculation. Okay, they can't even do a simple calculation. Most probably, I'm not sure. Most probably, maybe at the current stage, you yourself already become a senior. So those calculations might be actually handled by your junior engineer. So you only doing the checking. Okay. But as I say, as a professional, okay, again, all these are practice. So when you sign off so-called a document, okay, under your supervision, basically you're equally liable on the content of the document. Okay, so I believe I think for those candidates who actually want to go for your PCE exam, I believe some of you might actually need to polish a bit on your calculation, because I believe some of you might actually have passed down the work of all this calculation to your junior, so you might not be that hands-on. You see, so when you see these kind of questions, you might actually require a bit more time to manage this. But if you ask me personally, this kind of question is the easiest to score. Okay, because all engineers are trained to deal with figures and numbers. So as long as you get the so-called the concept right, I think you should be able to score the so-called the points if the questions are so-called calculation in nature lah. So as I say, if you are practicing consulting engineers, basically all these things are basically is part of your daily work. If you ask me, for example, preparing load estimation, you see, planning for the plant room, okay, and what is the issues? I mean, when you deal with the plant room planning, you see, all these things actually should be actually part of your, how to say, part of your daily work. Okay, if you are working as a consulting engineers. So this, if you ask me this, if this question come out, this should be a free question to you as well. Okay, if you are working as a consultant, okay. But of course, if your background is suppliers or contractors, you might not actually have this kind of experience. So maybe it's a bit tough for you to go through this because I believe maybe for contractors or suppliers, you might not actually deal with TMB substation design or plant room, so-called planning, or even load estimation. Okay. So of course, again, single line diagram basically is another so-called common so-called document we actually, as an electrical engineer, we always deal with. Okay. And I'm sure if you are practicing, again, if you are practicing as a consulting engineers, basically, I believe all these so-called sizing of a conductor, method of running, rating of switches, metering, all these things should be part of your daily work. Okay, should be part of your daily work. So basically, all these things should be at your fingertips. Okay, if you are doing the work yourself, okay, as a consulting engineers. Okay, of course, I would like to give some tips. Of course, I will not be giving so-called a spot question or anything, because if you ask me as electrical engineers, look at the syllabus. There's only so much of questions you can ask. Even though I'm not the examiners, but if you ask me, looking at the syllabus, I can briefly tell you basically what kind of question can be asked. Okay, based on the syllabus. I'm sure that some of you actually might be able to also, how to say, speculate. Okay, speculate what kind of question will come out, you see. For example, just now, based on some of the questions, for example, the so-called short circuit rating, you see, because these are the things that actually TMB will ask. You see, that's the reason why, basically, if you go through the syllabus, basically, some of the questions, you should be able to expect what type of questions will be asked during the PCE exam. Okay, of course, basically, I think many candidates actually did not perform well, also due to some of the reasons, like for example, you are not working as a consultant, so you might not have gone through the process. That's one thing. Another one also, because you have not go through the exam hall for so many years, suddenly you go through the exam again, you start to get panic. Okay, so, and I think that's why I say, I'm sure that every one of you are competent enough to answer all the questions in technically, but sometimes it's the so-called the preparedness, whether you are well prepared or not, emotionally and mentally. Okay, so basically, hopefully, after these sessions, you yourself will feel a bit more confident, okay, because you already have a certain strategies to approach this PCE exam. Okay, basically, for paper one, where is the multiple choice question, basically you're going to answer 40 questions within 1.5 hours. Okay, this is some of the time management, okay, we would like to recommend to you. Okay, basically you are not here, maybe some of you are top scorer last time in the universities, okay, you perform very well, but for PCE, please aim for the pass. Okay, and of course, I believe for PCE exam also, you'll be given 15 minutes, okay, 1-5, to go through the questions, okay, before you start to answer the questions. So you can actually do some planning, okay, before you start to approach the question. That is also very important, especially for your essay questions. Okay, for paper one, basically it's a multiple choice. So basically, as you say, you need to answer 40 questions. So basically, some question might be straightforward. Some question require you to do some calculation. So average, basically you should spend about 2 minutes per question, okay, if you want to aim to answer 40 questions. So time management is very important, okay. So please spend a bit more time on those questions you feel a bit more confident, okay, so that you don't waste a lot of time. At the end of the day, you don't manage to clear all the 40 questions. So please briefly, as I say, please briefly go through all the questions first, okay. Identify those easy ones, okay. Then you try to approach those first, you see, so that you don't waste a lot of time on certain questions. At the end of the day, you do not manage to answer all, when you're supposed to get all those easy questions at the end quickly, you see. Of course, I think based on the sample given also, you actually can roughly gauge, okay, what is the so-called, all these are multiple choice questions. I think BM actually, or the PCE committee actually, they actually have tried to tailor-make this question in a different way to trick the so-called the candidates. Okay, this is some of the recommendation. Okay, how we define the multiple. I mean, how we define the good multiple choice questions. Of course, this is only some of the recommendation. As I say, I believe every one of you actually have gone through your uni time. You have actually gone through multiple rounds of exams before. So sometimes we have actually left the universities for too long. So sometimes a bit tough for us to actually, to remind ourselves on how to prepare ourselves for the exams. So these are some of the so-called tips for you to choose the good question. But again, so-called preparation before the exam is very important, especially those documents you intend to bring in. Okay, so please, as I say, please go through those documents before you go to the exam. Okay, so that you will know where to look for, okay, during the exam time, because you'll be too panicked to so-called to search around, especially when you notice that the passing rate of PCE is less than 10%. That will actually give extra so-called extra pressure for the candidates. You see, in fact, the question might not be that tough if you manage to perform properly. Okay, as I say, these are the things. Okay, please take some time to go through the so-called the questions. Okay, to questions so-called accordingly before you start to approach the so-called the questions. Identify the so-called the keywords. I mean, these are the typical standards, so-called answering questions. I mean, for the exam. So basically, I think you can read this later on. Okay, and of course, I think based on the sample, you also notice they very often they always have this kind of so-called term in the multiple choice question: all of the above, none of the above. I believe, if you ask me personally, some people think that this kind of question is tougher to answer. But if you ask me personally, I would think that this kind of questions is the easiest to answer, because sometimes you might not need to know the correct answer, but because of all these so-called condition, you'll be able to strike out or to eliminate those wrong answer. Then straight away you will know how to select the correct answer already. Okay. So I think I believe many of you, actually all of you actually have gone through the same process. Okay. And for paper 2, is whereby is the so-called the exam questions, for the essay. So again, important thing is to plan your time. Okay, I will not go through this. I think I want to reserve more time for Q&A. Okay, plan your time, and please, if possible, okay, this is what actually suggested by the examiner. Okay, basically, please do a draft so-called draft answer, basically, so that your answers are structured. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you actually, before you answer an essay question, you actually put down the outline of your answer first. Okay, it strongly suggests that you actually put out a simple outline on how you intend to answer the thing, so that you do not leave anything out. Okay, try to prepare an outline of your answer, to list down what is the important elements you want to include. Then only you start to approach your answer properly. Okay, And again, time management is very important. Okay, as I say, you only need to answer 3 out of 5 questions. Okay, and no matter how you write, the so-called how many pages you write, basically the mark allocated for each question is already fixed. So does it mean that if you know the subject matter a bit more, you tend to get overexcited and you start to write 10 pages or 5 pages. So please plan your time properly so that you cover all the questions you want to cover, and place plan ahead your question, your outline of the answer, so that you don't miss out anything. Okay. Of course, for the exam, okay, we have spoken to the examiners. Basically, please do not worry about too much about your English. Okay, as long as you are able to express yourself correctly, okay, which means that when the examiner read your answer, they understand what you plan to express, then basically you are okay. Okay, you need not be perfect English where so all these so-called, you start to use a lot of very high level English or whatnot. You see, bear in mind this is a technical exam, so keep your answer simple and straight to the point. Okay, so that basically you'll be able to answer the question properly after you have actually drafted the outline. Okay, do not actually write long sentences. If possible, try to keep it simple. Okay, try not to worry too much about the grammar lah. Okay, as long as it's a simple English, I believe, or simple Malay, I believe the examiner also told us basically they are not there to test your language, but your language must be proper so that they can understand what you're trying to write. That's why if you prepare a proper so-called answer outline, is very important so that you can actually answer your question properly. Is in a proper sequence. Okay. Again, this is some of the strategies. As I say, time management. Okay, do not actually spend too much time on one questions. Okay, you should actually go through all the questions, okay, before you start to choose which question to answer. And basically try to approach those easy questions first, so that you have a bit more time. You can spend a bit more time on those actually require more time for you to answer, especially those calculation questions. Okay. Again, this is some of the tips, straight to the point. Okay, clear engineering sentence. So I think this is a common thing. Actually, we know. As I say, keep the answer simple after you have actually draft out your outline. Okay, so I will share this slide later on. I think that's all from me. And okay, for information, I believe every one of you actually, for those who actually sign up for the exam, PCE exam, I think the exam is on 13 and 14 November. They have 3 so-called center, KL, Kuching, and Sabah. So I hope you can attempt the exam and wish you all the best. I think that's all from me. Maybe we can open up for Q&A. Let me go through the questions. Okay. First question. How can I know what is the length should I write for the long essay? Okay. I think last time there are candidates actually asked these questions. That's the reason why if you approach a PCE exam now, okay, the examiners already put up the number of points per question. Okay, for example, if your question is having a few sub question. For example, question number 1, you have part A, part B, part C, and part D. Now basically PCE will actually allocate points in the questions. So which means that basically by looking at the point, you should know roughly how long you need to write, you need to answer for that particular part of the question. Of course, there's no number of words actually required by the questions. so far I don't see any requirements on that. Okay, so I don't think they will count. They will mark you by the number of words you use lah. Important is the so-called the facts and the information in your answer. And as I say, nowadays they will actually put the marks into the sub-part. For example, if part 1 is only 2 marks, then you should expect the answer for that particular part should be short and straightforward. If the so-called the part for that particular question is maybe 5 marks or 10 marks, then you should actually expect they expect you to write a bit longer on that particular item. Okay. Okay. Does it mean that for the PCE exam, they will base on Selangor State UBBL or Council guideline? Does other state requires to follow? Okay. The good thing about UBBL is actually UBBL has been drafted under the federal. Okay, has been drafted under the federal, but in terms of implementation, is subject to the state. So basically, you can actually refer to the general requirements of the one actually get implemented in 2012, which is the latest version. Okay, and for PCE, they will not actually ask question based on state specific. For example, they will not be asking question like, for example, if you submit a project in Majlis Perbandaran Sepang, what is the requirement? No, I don't think they will do that. As I say, this so-called this PCE exam is meant for the whole Malaysia, and basically we should be referring to the latest version, which is available under the KPKT website lah, which is the 2012 version. Okay, 2012 version. Okay, which, as I say, that version has been jointly developed by the state agency and also Bomba. Okay, just that the implementation part, different state will take a different timeline to implement that, depends on the state condition. Okay, so basically you should be able to refer to the latest version, which which Selangor is adopting lah. Okay, another question. Hi, or anyone to sit PCE exam this coming November? Can I have a show of hands? How many of you actually are attending? So-called attending your PCE exam this coming 13 and 14 November. I only see one. Only one, two. How come this one's clap? Is it means that he already passed the exam? Okay, seems like I think the registration for the PCE exam already closed. So if you want to go for the exam now, basically you can't. Okay, so I think most probably you have to wait for another year. So I only see one hand here, but I believe more than one person will be attending the so-called will be attending the exam this coming November, and all the best. All the best. What else? Any other specific PCE for instrument or telecom engineer is registered under the electrical branch? Oh, this one, okay. This one may be out a bit topic, but I will try to share with you, okay, based on what I understand. Okay, basically, as mentioned, currently, there's only 7 disciplines the board actually have been conducting PCE for the 7 disciplines, as I mentioned in my slide, based on the last year, 2019 registration, basically only 7 disciplines, okay? And of course, for instrumentation and telco engineers, okay, I'm not sure whether you are aware or not. Basically, under the board now, they actually have restructured the discipline of the sub-discipline under the electrical branch. Okay, so I think nowadays, I think the sub-discipline actually have been reduced. Okay, based on the most recent BM circulars. I think you can refer to BM website. But of course, as I say, technically, BEM need to entertain, okay, those who actually would like to go for a PCE for other sub-discipline. That's the reason why basically BEM will actually try to wait for the request. They will only process, or they only process those sub-discipline when there's a request. Okay, because currently under the board registration, there are over almost 90 discipline registered under the board. Can you imagine if the board have to go through 90 PCE exam with all these sub-discipline? I believe BEM currently they do not have the resources to do that. That's the reason why some of the discipline has been added, along the year, compared to the first year they have actually conducting the PCE exam in 2016. I think 2016, basically there's only three discipline. Not even, I think maybe not even chemical. It's only electrical, mechanical, and civil. Because during that time, they noticed that only these few major disciplines are required, okay, for the consulting engineers to perform their daily work. But along the way, because of the other so-called agencies, whereby, for example, certain agencies, they might want to actually register certain professional engineers under environmental, for example, for DOE, you see. That's the reason why the board actually start to so-called expand the PCE exam into other discipline. But of course, as I say, for those who actually wanted to go for PCE for other sub-discipline, we actually can request to the board. And I believe the board will actually start to plan for that when they have sufficient requests. You see, because the board also say it might not be viable or feasible for them to have the PCE exam if there's only one candidate who actually want to go for it. That's why for some of the discipline, they actually take some time for BEM to establish the papers and also the questions, because they need to form a different committee for a different discipline.
Actually, I just checked the BEM website. There's none PE under instrumentation. I think about a dozen for telecommunication.
Yeah.
So I think it's like what you say. It's not easy to easy to just prepare like the examination just for this small group of people, right? Yeah.
Yes. Because I was in the board committee last time on these particular matters, and they're telling us, say, end of the day, if you want to start up a committee to have this kind of PCE exam, you end up the examiner is more than the candidate, because you require certain numbers of examiners. To have all these questions ready. You see all the question bank. So basically, the committee might end up more than the candidate, and the BM think that maybe they want to wait for more requests before they can actually so-called look into those things. As I say earlier on, the PCE is mainly meant for practicing engineers, whereby I think discipline like maybe for electronic, maybe at the moment electronic PEPC might not have so-called such demand at the moment. Of course, on top of those actually already a PEPC for electronic, but for the new one, most probably there might not be many of them actually want to go for PEPC, because they do not see the needs for electronic PEPC to endorse on any submission or whatnot. You see, so the demand is not there maybe at the moment.
Okay. So I can assume that it's not necessary for the instrument or telecom engineer to take this exam.
I think at the moment, as I say, we have seen actually many so-called PE want to go for PEPC for a different purpose Okay, so people think that as I say, I always tell my friend, I say PE and PEPC basically, if you ask me personally, is at the same equal standing. Just that PEPC, because we need to do submission, that's why we need to know a bit more about the regulation as a practicing engineers, because we are dealing with public interest, because we are building houses or building which occupied by public later on. You see, so there are certain regulations and rules we need to know, need to understand as a PEPC. But for example, if you are working as a electrical engineer in a factory or production or whatnot, or even as a lecturer. You see, so that I mean, you might not actually need to go through the PCE route lah, if you ask me, because in a way you are not doing the same nature of work as a consultant. Okay, so it again depends lah, because I mean it again depends on individual lah. Okay, as I say, by right, the board cannot say no if you want to apply for PCE exam. That's why they are trying to collect the demand so that they can actually start to form lah. But of course, as I said, there are many candidates actually start to write to the board. You see, and furthermore, for you to attend the exam also, it's not cheap. So unless you find it really necessary for you to go for PEPC. If not, I can see some of the candidates, even though they are PE, they don't see the need to go for PEPC lah. I mean that's what's happening now at the moment.
But without the practicing cert, then we can't endorse the application of our engineer that want to apply for this PE, right?
Which is that's not the true. Okay, if you go through the of course maybe this one is a bit deviated from the topic. Okay, basically there are certain things a PE can do. There are certain things a PEPC can do. So I would suggest you can actually go to the website. It's not that PE cannot stamp. Okay, you can still stamp, but for certain application.
Okay.
Okay, and I trust me when I say so. When you have the power to stamp, I don't think you want to stamp, because when you stamp and sign, that carries a lot of liability and responsibility. Okay. Okay, let's go through a few more questions here.
Just to share for Mr. Bang Hok So, I think you can sign for you want to be mentor, you can sign, because my PE application is signed by a PE, not PEPC.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
In fact, as a PE also you can still sign for some of the thing. Okay, just that you cannot do submission to local council for a new project, but there are certain applications, there are certain things you can sign. You can still sign. For example, I just take a typical example. If you are working as an engineer in a suppliers, okay, you are designing certain system. Okay, you are the one who designing the system. At the end of the day, you are responsible on the design of that particular equipment, for example. Okay, you can still sign for that particular that particular design, you see, and that is allowed under the act. As I try to say, PEPC is mainly meant for submission to local council, to agencies, authorities. Some agencies where you are not dealing with construction project, basically they still accept PE endorsement. Okay, the problem is even though our board actually have a clear demarcation on the scope of PE and the scope of PEPC, but some of the authorities or agencies they are not able to differentiate. Okay, because they always think that PEPC and PE or any PE macam standard 1, or I want to have a standard 2 PEPC. So that's why some of the local agencies or agencies or government agencies, they are not aware of the difference. That's why, to be on the safe side, they tend to ask for a PEPC. But as I say, under the regulation, the board actually allowed certain power, okay, or certain or certain power to the certain authorities to the PE. You can sign on certain documentation. Okay, I think that one is been explained in the board website lah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, for electrical installation for MVHC equipment, is it mandatory to have a competent electrical engineer to monitor and supervise the installation, or registered electrical contractor? Anyone with this can do so. Form G and H to be signed off by the competent person. Okay, this okay. If you refer to the Form G and H, actually they already clearly mention who need to sign. Okay, and basically for this G and H, basically they are referring to the person, the competent person, not the contractor license. So even though for this this CCC form also, basically we are signing from our personal. No, if you refer to the form G, which I mentioned just now, CCC, okay, as I mentioned for electrical engineers, okay, you need to sign form G 7, 16, 18, 20. You see, and if you got a time, please go to BM website and download the form. You can see from there, even though the work is done by the electrical contractor, okay, but the one who actually signed the CCC form on behalf of the electrical contractor basically is the competent person himself, which means that basically he's signing as a person. Okay, of course he's representing the government, I mean the company, but he's signing as a person, whereby the registration number he put there is a personal registration number. For example, maybe it's a wireman, then you need to put his wireman's number there. You see, it's not the company number, it's his own personal number. I think form G and H basically is a similar thing. Okay, somebody, as I say, when for example, if myself I'm practicing as a consultant, okay, even though the work is assigned to my company, but when I sign, I'm signing off as myself, Chong Chiu Fan, not signing off as ABC Sdn Bhd. Even though for form G and H, and also for the CCC form, basically we're signing off as a person, not signing off as a company, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Could you, I hope I answered that. Could you share how we could retrieve the statistic of civil, mechanical, electrical pass percentage for all years? Possible to know the quantity of passing for each state. Okay, those information are not available I think from the board website. Okay, in fact, those as I mentioned in my slide just now, for 2019 so-called statistic, actually the board actually have not actually declared those. Okay, so I'm not sure for the states. Sometimes it might be a bit difficult because as you know, if you can see, currently the exam so-called is conducted in three different locations: KL, Kuching, and KL, Sarawak, and Sabah. Last time the exam only conducted during the early stage. The exam only conducted in Peninsula. You see, so I'm not sure whether they are able to give you this kind of statistic or not. For sure, those statistics are not available in the BM website at the moment. So I don't think you can get those information. I mean, if you want to get the detailed statistic, you wanted. Okay, but of course, from the association point of view, from ACM, we will try to get those data. I mean, from the board, so that we can do some analysis, okay, and on how to, what is the real problem when it comes to this kind of so-called low passing rate for the exam, because I think everyone is very concerned, you see, on the passing rate. And in fact, for information, I believe BM, the board level also, I think they are also conducting studies, okay, why the exam passing rate is so low, what is the real problem. But just that those information is not disclosed to us at the moment. Okay, that's why I say for those who actually attempted the PCE exam or plan to attempt a PCE exam, if you have any suggestions or anything, you can actually channel this to our association ACM. We will try to bring this up, okay, to the board when there's an opportunity, so that the board actually can also look into those suggestions, okay, to improve the so-called the quality and also the competency of the candidates. You see, because I think at the moment they have not actually disclosed anything beyond what I have shown just now. Any more questions? Fong Yip Hin. Dato' Anand is the one leading the PCE review committee. Good, good, good. I hope the board will actually slowly publish their review outcome, so that at least we also want to know what is the cost of this the low passing rate for PCE, and of course at the same time we also, I think, from the institution or association point of view, we also at the same time we also want to try to improve the competency for the candidates, or for the competent, for the practicing engineers, because very often we also get the complaints from some of the agencies like Bomba. They keep on complaining to us, saying that the submitting person, the SP, the quality of the submission is very bad, and that is the reason the rejection rate of the plan submitted is very high. So in a way, in short, if professionals do not actually try to improve our competency very soon, the local agencies like Bomba will be implementing a lot of new requirements to on us, and to start to actually force the professionals to attend courses, and they will start to have different layers of registration. Okay, so as I say, not only Bomba, in fact, we are also getting a lot of complaints from Energy Commission, because nowadays, I guess internets are the source of all the information. So nowadays, the tenant or the purchasers, have all the information from the internet and start to check the work of the consulting engineers, whether the property they bought is following the requirements or not. And Energy Commission has receiving a lot of complaints, from the purchasers on some of the design by the consultants. Okay, myself personally have attended a few of the discussion as the stakeholders, invited by ST, because of all these complaints from the purchasers to the consultants' work. So at one point, I think we want to know how can we actually pass the exam, with less attempt, but at the same time also, I think from the association point of view, we also want to try to improve the competency for the practicing engineers. That's why, of course, I think for conducting preparation course, to be very honest, I seriously, I don't know. Okay, if you are working as a consultant, you are lack of certain knowledge or experience or certain field, then yes, maybe you can actually gain, or to so-called to close the gap by attending some courses. Okay, but if you are not working as a consultant and you have not gone through the full process of a consultant, for example, submission or to TMB, submission to local council, CCC process, I'm not sure what kind of courses we need to conduct to complement you with all those experience required, which I think that will be a bit tough. Because we can only train you to close the gap, to make sure you know what you're supposed to know as a practicing consultant or the practicing engineers. But we cannot actually pass you that kind of knowledge and also experience through the preparation course. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. One more thing. 2.5 pages mentioned is okay. Okay, again, 2.5 pages basically is for each questions. For each questions. Of course, this is, as I say, this is only some recommendation. Also depends on the question itself. You see, as I say, you should not actually spend too much time on one question, because you only have 1.5 hours for 3 questions. So the first thing you do, you should be screening through all the 5 questions and try to understand the question, before you start to choose which question is for you to choose, for you to attempt. That's the reason why for PC exam, you are given some time for you to read the questions. Of course, during the time you cannot answer the question. For you to read the question so that you can plan ahead which question to choose before you straight away go to the question without looking at those questions at the back, which might be maybe those questions at the back is easier for you to answer based on your experience. Okay. Any more? Of course, I think from the association point of view, we will be our plan is to conduct some competency course. Okay, competency course. Basically, as I say, the purpose of the competency course will be to complement you on certain aspect. Okay, in terms of technical knowledge, because your current involvement or your current practice might not actually you might not actually have the exposure. For example, you know, based on the syllabus, you know that basically we will actually cover some exterior lighting, you see, which maybe some of the engineers, they have been working for building projects. They are maybe for the past so many years, they are not actually involved in some of the exterior works. So then I will actually recommend you to attend some of these competency courses to polish up your knowledge on this aspect of the work. Okay, how should you do actually a road design, tunnel design, or exterior lighting design? Because throughout your practice, you do not have the opportunity to do this work. But in the syllabus of PCE, you are expected to know some knowledge. You're supposed to have some knowledge on these things. Then I think it's practical for you to go for the preparatory course, you see. Just to complement certain segment of the work or certain segment of the knowledge you are lacking because of the nature of your work. As I say, you cannot actually offer a course where you attend for 1 week. Later on, you are competent enough to take the PCE exam. You see, which I don't think anyone will be able to conduct this kind of courses lah. But of course, to complement yourself on certain knowledge or certain segments or certain sectors, yes, I think that would be practical. Any other questions?
I think because since it's already 2:15, maybe we should close our
Yeah. Yes. I think no problem. Can. Okay. That's all. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we have come to the end part of our presentation. Thank you, Engineer Chong Chiu Fan, for a great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today, and thank you everyone for active participation for today's session. We hope you learn and enjoy from today's presentation. For a soft reminder, once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a thank you email attached with the webinar feedback form. We will appreciate if you complete that and provide your feedback. We hope to see you again on the next webinar session. Stay safe, everyone. Take care and Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Engineer Chong.
Thank you. Thank you.